On all the channels. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. I got a bang thing going on. It is Rose Kaz, if you nasty, the OG lady boss. And I'm bringing to stage some pretty amazing one lady boss today. Although I would like actually to bring many if there's people either in Clubhouse. We're live in Clubhouse right now. I believe we're live in Clubhouse. We should be. Let me see. Yeah, here we go. Hey, tech. I love it. I'm inside the internet. I'm getting a little feedback that could be from me. Not sure. Joining the room in progress. You know what it's like? We're on the radio, but we're on the internet. So it's pretty awesome. Like I said, I'm Rose Kaz. And one of the things I'm super excited about isn't really breaking the internet necessarily. I just want to buy it back. I'd like to buy it back with all the other lady bosses. And that's exactly what we got popping on the Backstage Pass. If you haven't been backstage yet, I want you to check it out. The LBI Backstage Pass is a place where badass women like myself, yes, Rose Kaz, I'm a badass woman in business. I've been in business for about 15 years, doing it one way or another, but trying to do it differently and corralling women globally to talk about exactly how we're doing that. Not just talk about it like, that would be an interesting theory, but like, how are we actually organizing ourselves differently from the way we do our relationships to the way we do our money to the way we organize our time when we're working in our business or even working for other people's businesses. So that's what we're talking about today, whether you're here in the Clubhouse room. Hey, Latias, thanks for stopping by. We're getting started with this conversation in one hot minute. If you are over here on LinkedIn, hello, LinkedIn friends. We've been doing these lives up on the LinkedIn platform for a couple weeks now. I'm trying to do it as a regular Friday experience, showcasing our different community members on the Backstage Pass. So like I said, if you haven't gone backstage yet, what are you waiting for? If you're joining us from Facebook, hello, Mr. Zuckerberg. We're just trying to do it a different way. More on that later. Okay. But if you've been following me, you know that I'm just like really not a big fan of letting one guy have all of the keys to all of our social content, WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook. So what we're doing is we're building different places for us to come together as thought leaders, as I like to call myself a little bit of a shit stir. I like to stir things up because I don't know if y'all have noticed lately, but the status quo is a little bit like in the shit box. So we are here to do things differently, y'all. And what better way to do it than to talk to other people who are doing the same thing? Oh, yes, yes. My guest today, as always, I like to ask my guests, what do you want? What kind of music gets you in the mood to do the thing you like to do best? Which, in this case, as women in business, we're talking about business. And today's guest, Sarah Poet, has suggested we hear a little Isla Nero. Check out this lady boss. This is from her album called Hollow Bone. Okay, we're getting a little light. We're getting a little airy. We're talking about how woke is your work. Now I know woke, like, come on, like, I don't really want to talk about woke. That's such a passe word. That word is so annoying. But for real, like, is your work woke? Are you paying attention? Are you even paying attention? Well, welcome to the stage, a dear friend, collaborator, and conspirator in shaking the shit, Sarah Poet. Welcome in. How are you today, Lady Boss? So glad that you are here.
Hey, Rose, it's so good to be here, stirring the shit with you.
Yes, Lady Boss. That is what we do. And y'all, I'm super excited. Friends here in Clubhouse, friends on the live on the Backstage, and anyone who's connecting through the channels of Restream, just know that, you know, we come to talk some smack, but we do so with love and I think a little bit of levity, certainly some light. Sarah Poet, tell us a little bit about what you're doing in the world as a coach and consultant for individuals, couples, and thought leaders around this idea of, is your work woke? Over to you, Sarah.
Yeah, so good to be here with you. And I'm so ready for this conversation today about doing work differently. And you and I have been talking about kind of going beyond even, some people want to we're acting like the work is woke, but it's not actually woke. And I got a little tired of pulling teeth, pretending, kind of getting on the stage, and decided again recently to be really, really real.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
it's a good
something
time
that
for
we
this
talked about
conversation.
in getting started and getting ready for this conversation is that radical honesty, and I think we talk about, like, things like the Great Resignation, right? Like, women around the world being like, "Hold on a second. This
Yeah, it's not
isn't
working.
working for me."
Right.
And, like, we have to be if we're gonna call a timeout in any case, whether it's with work, whether it's with our partners, with our families, whatever, right? We're having to be
Yeah.
radically honest. So we wanna talk about that a little bit, and I know in the years that you and I have worked together, years now, right? Like, I know we did some photo work
Yeah.
together. We've been collaborators and conspirators in different ways. But I've also heard you speak about this radical honesty, not just in like professional and personal development, but I want to point to this really great post you shared a couple, maybe it's been a month or two by now, but it was this image, right, of these greyhounds like at a race, right? There's like four stalls, and these dogs are all like, they're like holding them back, right? They have the gate down. And then there's one, I think, or I could be remembering this incorrectly. And then there's like a cheetah in one of the stalls who's just
She's
like
just laying back.
I'm not even
Yeah.
playing in,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
the dog is like about like, let me out, right? And so that visual of like, what if I'm not even playing the race? Like, what does the race look like if I don't want to play it? If I quit, like I'm out, right? And so, sure, yeah, we're two white ladies talking about this at varying levels of some sort of, advantage of privilege, right? But collectively, what if we asked ourselves, like, what does this race look like? What does business look like? What does organizing our time and energy look like if we just don't play that game anymore? Like, what's the new game look like? Do we need, does it have to be a game, right? So talk to me a little bit how you're
Right.
feeling about that and share your
Yeah.
thoughts.
I feel like I've been living this experiment for years. My work is focusing on feminine and masculine archetypes, and I really have said so many times, like, I feel like I'm not allowed to do status quo. I mean, it doesn't work when I do status quo. Like, if I wanted to make money in a traditional way, I couldn't do it. And so what that's looked like for me as I've really walked this really authentic path of feminine and masculine archetypal reclamation in my own life is like, we have been exhausting the feminine archetype. We've been exhausting that feminine energy in women, but also in the earth, in everything. We've taken that for granted for thousands of years. And so, what does it look like as lady bosses if we start to say, actually, I'm not going to run my own feminine energy into the ground anymore? I'm not going
Mm,
to abuse myself. I'm not going to, take advantage of my own energy and go into depletion just to try to like hustle to, run a business. And so I've been breaking that down for years,
mm,
helping women look at, well, what does it really mean to organize my feminine and masculine energy differently? And if we're trying to get away from those old, like, patriarchal hustle archetypes of the masculine, then, we have to start asking ourselves questions about, like, how am I using my own time, my own
mhm,
energy,
mhm.
my own resources, which I love talking to women about our resources, which is a whole other thing. But like, I'm all about sustainability in our own resources. So that little meme, I had seen that, I think, on LinkedIn, and just took a screenshot of those people were like, let's race the greyhounds and the cheetah. And the cheetah was like laying back, like, why do you assume I'm racing? Like, why do you assume I'm just good because you open these gates? I'm going to race. I've got way better things to do with my energy than race these greyhounds.
Right.
And that I saw that really at a time where I was like questioning everything about how we're doing female entrepreneurship. And like, the social media scene is like a race sometimes. And we're like racing for attention and racing for, the dollars. And it's like,
Mhm.
but that's not sustainable
Right.
for our
Right.
energy.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
absolutely, it's not sustainable, but it's I think it points to the bigger picture of where we can advocate for what we give energy, what we give time, what we give consent and
Yeah.
authority to, right? Because like the dollar bill is an example, right? It
Yeah.
literally has different pieces of both English and Latin and maybe other languages on there that talk about our tacit consent of being like, this piece of paper means this thing, and then we give it the value, right? It means more than apparently a different piece of paper with a different piece of writing on it, right? But we've
Yeah.
all collectively agreed to
Right.
that.
It's like what we
And
buy into. Yeah.
right, of course, now we have all these like, bizarro things like Bitcoin and NFTs that are giving that concept a run for its money fundamentally. We don't have to get into that conversation. But like in very similar but different ways, we're seeing the way that we organize our power and the structure of it and who gets to say this is that. I mean, look at it would be an interesting, and I'm sure there are these stats to share out there, but like you have a teenage year old, right? Like teenage
13, yeah, 13-year-old son.
13-year-old, right? And it'd be curious to know in their class right now, like what the pronoun conversation looks like versus 10 years ago, 20 years ago,
Yeah.
or 40 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Because I know in my 13-year-old experience, what was not a conversation. And now we're going to segue into talking about the balance of the masculine and the feminine, because I know that's work that you do quite regularly. But these young teens are like, no, like I am not a man person. I am not a woman. Like they are having this conversation in ways that are just much more
It's amazing.
common
Yeah.
than what we can, even as adults who've been like grappling with this our whole life as well, right? It's like, wow, how
Yeah.
interesting, right? And
I was
so
like, I know how to talk about the archetypes, and my son's like, "Mom, please." I mean, I still don't know, you know? I thought I
yeah,
was
isn't
good,
that
but
interesting?
I
Well,
can't do
and so
it.
like as we talk about like what does the race look like if we don't even play because we're not participating by those
Yeah,
gender roles anymore? Like, yo, check it out. I can open my own bank account, I can buy my own car, I can drive my own car, and I don't need to be a married piece of property in order for that to happen.
right.
Spoiler alert, progress has been made,
Yeah,
right? But still, how are we balancing what some of these
yeah,
like ancient threads are
right.
kind of like holding us? And that's kind of what I see you doing when we talk about balancing the masculine and the feminine. So will you talk a little bit more, maybe boil that
Mhm.
balance of masculine and feminine down to a T, like
Yeah.
a little spoon feed for me? Because sometimes I
Well,
get lost in the details.
right. First of all, I don't even know that it's about a balance. Like, I'm interested in us coming into conscious awareness of what is a conscious masculine and what is a conscious feminine. And I'm talking about archetypes, and we all have both archetypes inside of us. So, obviously the feminine was super downplayed for a very long time. The masculine was, you know, overdone. And so I talk about this in my TEDx, but when the masculine was given all of that, let's say power, right? Because that was like a power paradigm, then like the feminine had to go into suppression. And so we've been living this. Like, we have taken on things like, push and getting as much done with our day as we possibly can, and having to have all of the answers, and like having to have never ending amounts of energy. And all of that is an expression of the masculine that was perpetuated through patriarchy, but isn't necessarily conscious or the most healthy. And so a lot of my clients have, begun to like wake up to, oh my gosh, I've suppressed this thing called the feminine. And then
Sorry,
I
I'm
was
just pulling. I
the
was
TEDx.
trying to pull up your TEDx so I could link it. I'm like, why don't we have this linked? And then, of course, the
Oh
YouTube video.
yeah, it's on my website, which I saw you have there. And so yeah, I'm not exactly sure where I was there, but the feminine awakenings that are happening in women, women are like remembering, like, obviously it's not okay to suppress a portion of who we are. And women are getting sick all over the place, hormonally and otherwise, because they've been like overextending in that masculine, archetype. I think this is fascinating conversation to bring to entrepreneurship, because I've seen it over and over and over again that female entrepreneurs like leave the workplace because they know, not all of me is valued here, or, I'm going to start this business of heart and soul. I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to follow my own mission. But then she takes with her the masculine archetype of overworking, or,
Mhm.
like I was saying before, like running that, the softer, more intuitive parts of herself, like running it into the ground.
Right, because
And
we can't
like,
just put pink on the patriarchy, right?
exactly. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so what does that actually mean? Like, what does that actually mean for us in entrepreneurship? What does that actually mean in a corporation? And it's not really just about like getting women back into the spaces, although, yay, that's progress, right? But also, how are we all acting and behaving? And if we are continuing to suppress like half the energy of all of creation, then, we still have the patriarchal problem perpetuating.
Right, which reminds me expressly of like, it's considered a bad word in different circles, but like early feminism, right? Like
Yeah.
let's go with first wave feminism, who,
Right.
well, left out all of the women of color, right? And that was maybe accepted because, well, at least we've got some progress, Jane. And it's like, yeah, but not really if it's just for half of us, because we were already segmented out, right? And now you could say the same similarly. We're in a
Yeah.
moment where we've made some progress for our sisters of color, but then also like our trans sisters. Like, where are we at with that, right?
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Well, I mean, the topic here, like how woke is your business, and what I love is like questioning the paradigm in the first place. Like, question, why are we all like rat racing toward the ideals that were constructed by white men a long time ago? Like,
Right.
why? Why are we doing that? And so, just unconsciously, there has been this race to get everybody to that place of equality, but I said this in the TEDx. It's like, it, why do I want that? Why
Right.
do I want that equality? Like, why do I want to, right?
Right.
Like, we need a different game, a different conversation.
Back to
Yeah.
the meme, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not running that race, right? And so
Right.
this is something I know you and I have circled back and forth on. Speaking to my friend Jen the other day, just many women I'm speaking to, and even men actually for that matter. It's
Yeah.
like, so we had this 2 year fucking break,
Yeah.
right? Like, and not all of us had breaks. Some were frontline, so we lost a lot of folks. Like, there was a huge timeout for the whole world because of COVID, right? And after a little while, I was like, okay, granted, I had a few ugly cries and meltdowns and still have along the way. We're
Yeah.
still also
Yeah.
still kind of in a
Mhm.
COVID, not COVID, whatever. But here we are 2 years later, given the opportunity to go, hold on, let me look
Mhm.
under the hood of my business, of my life, of my any way I expend energy, right? And is there a way that's at least where my mind got, and maybe that was from my perch of privilege, being a non-frontline worker, being a white lady, being, out of my zone of work at the time was a large event, was like canceled, right? But I
Mhm.
took that opportunity to think like, well, this shit wasn't really working great for me, honestly, right? And that's just my
Mhm.
personal experience. And then I started to talk with people like you more and more. We're like, yeah, actually, and then we start to see collectively things like the Great Resignation, right? Where
Mhm.
more and more women are going, okay, so my question is, if we've had that 2 years and we've
Mhm.
had the opportunity to start these kinds of conversations at bigger levels with more groundswell behind them, then why, and myself included, I've found myself like muscle memory getting right back into the damn grind, maxing myself out. And I work for myself
Mm.
and I'm signing
Mhm.
myself up, as you say, when we leave, what would be corporate or other, even if you're not in corporate and you're in some form of the structure, not doing your own thing. I'm doing my own thing and I'm trying to build something new. And I
Yeah.
find myself like muscle memory right back in the damn grind. So
Yeah.
how can we, right? Like, what is the thing? Like, what is the practice? What is
Mm.
the damn button? I know it's not an easy button, but like,
It's not an
where do
easy
we
button.
go from like armchair philosophizer, like, yes, lady boss, this sounds like a fabulous idea,
Yeah.
to like
Mm.
actually implementing structural change within our own self, business, and relationships. Like, what, like, how do we actualize this, Sarah?
Well, I have a couple of things
Hmm.
that I've made for people, right? So that was the question, like, how do we do this? And so, day by day, step by step. So I have a system called Structure and Flow. And that's for primarily women who are recognizing, oh my gosh, I've been running myself into the ground. Another interesting thing energetically happens, like with a lot of female entrepreneurs is there's like a pendulum swing. Like for me, myself personally, I left, the structure of schools and being a school principal and for entrepreneurship. And then there was like a lot of free time and, or not free time, but like, open time. And so we can either like overwork in that space, or maybe we're like, oh my gosh, I can, take a nap in the middle of the afternoon. That's a very feminine thing, right? So I actually see a lot of female entrepreneurs who then get like, they swing the pendulum into the feminine energy, and they're like, but wait, the money's not coming in, or like they get lost in like the psyche and the emotionality, right? And
Mhm.
so like I work with like, what does it actually look like to practically implement feminine and masculine? So a lot of people that are coming to me are already, you know we're using the word woke in this chat, but like I never use the word woke, so it's funny to say it. But my clients are like already on the woke, they're already on that path of like, oh, there is this thing called the feminine and the masculine, and I want to express it in work, because the more I do, the more my energy is going to be balanced, the more I'm going to know like about my
Mhm.
boundaries,
Mhm.
about the clarity on my energy, and the the more we're going to actually create wealth in a sustainable way. Because side note, the only way that we have known to make wealth is to put on that masculine energetic and and hustle for it. And so that's why we're doing it, because we don't know another way. And I've been over here for 4 years on this path, like studying the energetics of what does another way look like, and
Mhm.
then trying different things myself. And it's interesting because I want to say like not everything that I've tried has worked, in terms of like running a financially sustainable or financially viable business. It was like, well, okay, I'm not going to just hustle. I'm not going to like race the greyhounds out of the gate. I'm
Right.
not fucking doing it. So let me find a different way. Let me do this differently. And I got so sick of doing Facebook. I was like, part of that was my like what I was bringing to it. But I
Mhm.
was like, I don't like this platform. I don't like, I mean, we're streaming to Facebook right now because guess what? Like half of my business had come from Facebook. And so if I wasn't on Facebook sharing like my thought leadership, my ideas, I was attracting less clients. It wasn't good for business for me to be like, I can just leave that. And
Mm.
I wanted to just leave that because it does not fit with like my ethic of like where I want to be spending my time and energy. I don't like the platform.
Right, I mean,
And
it was, like, founded on slut shaming, hello, by a bunch of, like, bros in
oh,
their dorm, right? I mean, like, what honest
yeah,
good foundation of that,
right,
obviously, right? But
right,
also,
right.
like, that to your
Energetically.
point energetically, but to your point of, like, it's like we have to build something new whilst like, we can't just totally move out of the house, we have to have the another house to move into, right? So we have to, like,
Right.
build other arenas and stages for the expression of this type of experience, of this kind of
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
as we're, like, talking mad shit about the one we're living in, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's totally ironic, and I feel like similar to you,
Yeah.
like, wanting to do business in integrity, not wanting to do things that,
Yeah.
trigger my fight or flight because I'm like, "Oh, this
Right.
is awful," right? So
Right.
so talk about that balance then, where you kind of make the boundary fluid or there's hard no's
Right.
or,
Right. Yeah. Well, thanks for building an alternative platform so we
well,
can talk
we're
about
working
real
on
things. Yeah,
it.
we're doing it. So what it looks like, I think, first and foremost, like any change in the world, it starts with us, right?
Right.
So what does it look like? It looks like me knowing exactly where my energy goes. It looks like only giving, this is big for women, only giving energy when it feels life generating to give it. Like,
Mm.
what if we only like expended our energy as women when it was life generating to give it? Because that's the other thing. I'm not just trying to conserve my energy. I'm actually trying to build my energy and like build wealth and build the energy of women so that we're not just like sustainable, like survival,
Mhm.
like that's old school. That's
Right.
patriarchal, right?
Right.
We felt so
Right.
fucking depleted that we were just surviving. I actually want women to um, like have more than we started with, right?
Right.
And so that, I mean, that's a whole other different like way of living. It's like, how if I want to keep growing wealth, but I'm also going to take care of my body every single time I get tired or sick, like what are those new energetics, right? Like how does that work, right?
Mhm.
Because the old model would say like run yourself into the ground if you want to get what you need, right? So when I work with people, like we are rewriting those energetics like through every mechanism. And so that's what I would say is like it's the sustainability with our energy and like turning from the depletion energetic into like the regenerative energetic. And these are things that I teach. It starts with us. It starts with
Right.
us.
Right. So totally dig that it's like each of our individual, right? Because like if you're working with an individual, if you're working with a couple, or if you're working with a business group, or even a couple that's in business together, or an individual business owner, right?
Yeah.
It is our own approach to these energetics, but it's also, I know you and I have talked about this. I've in building the Backstage Pass, I've experienced this, that sometimes that kind of information can feel like a fire hose of like, to use the overused word, wokeness,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Like
Right.
there's just like, oh yes, I meditate. Yes, I read the most, all the self-help books. Yes, I, drink a lot of water. What else do I need to do? Like I can hear some responses
Yeah.
from within myself and from other people on like, I just have to run. This is my favorite in
Yeah.
the last couple months is like, yes, Rose, I'm here for this, but I'm just really busy running my business. And it's like, yeah, I know. That's the thing. You're busy running your business because you're burning your fucking shit out so that you can
Yeah.
be busy running your business. I
Right.
know. I keep doing it too, and I'm sick of it. Like, let's
Yeah.
stop it, right?
Right.
Like, because the goal, I think of this time on the earth is to enjoy it, right? And even though it's really important to be able to pay for food and clothing and shelter to enjoy
Yeah.
it, it is also
Right.
important to like recognize that most of this scarcity idea is bullshit,
Right.
right? Like it's superimposed. Now there is like there is full realized like,
Yes.
yes, rent is coming.
Right.
I need to
Right.
pay it. I don't have the money. Like that's real. And how do we make it, to your point, of a sustainable existence that allows us to like meet those markers and then also like get a little bit above it? It's like
Right.
literally it's a redistribution of all the wealth, but since we're not necessarily playing Peter Pan right now, and we're actually women in business who want to structure and organize ourselves differently. I think it's like little teaspoons of that fire hose for me.
So I don't think that I want to enjoy the planet while I'm on it too, right? Like not in a consumptive way, but in a like full gratitude, love in my life kind of way. But I think that the reason that we're on the planet right now is to raise the consciousness of the planet. Like I don't think that there's not another reason why I'm here. And so that's why, you and I were talking the other day. That's why I am just embracing that I'm going to step into this conversation and I might not be talking at a level where everyone can hear me. Like,
Mm,
and I get that. And I'm here to raise consciousness on this planet. And so I'm not here to change all minds. And I'm
mm,
not here to save everybody. Like, it's true. I am a woman with a certain amount of energy and a certain amount of days on this planet. And so I just decided, like, how woke is my business? It's pretty fucking woke. And like when people are engaging in that space, it's because they want to know like what I'm talking about, like this frequency that I am emanating in my life and the way that I live and the things that I've figured out about the way these energetics work, the way finances work, the way we can replenish ourselves, the way relationships work. This is funny. I Okay, so your question was like, what do we need to do? Well, we
mm,
need to engage. And I don't know about you, but I'm really sick of like memes that are very basic. Like, I don't want to publish those kinds of things anymore. I
mm,
don't, I'm not going to remind people to do mindfulness, although I like trained in mindfulness back in my days in education. I can teach that to you. I know all about how important it is that the nervous system regulate. I'm probably not going to have your basics class. Somebody else has your basics class. And then when you're regulating your nervous system and you really want to integrate these archetypes within you, that's when people are coming to me. When you want a business that like is working in the balance, that's when women are coming to me for
So
coaching.
I should have asked you this earlier because I assumed that I knew, but you know what they say when you assume. So break down archetype, right? Like
Yeah.
break down feminine archetype, masculine. Maybe not exactly what each one is, but when you say archetype specifically.
I'm talking about the energy,
Mhm.
like the archetypal energy. So archetypes are in the collective unconscious. That's how Carl Jung described it. And this is in my TEDx. And so, like I have masculine in me, masculine archetypal energy. And the way I teach this is like there's conscious masculine, feminine, but then there's like a hyper expression of both and a hypo expression of both.
Hmm.
So patriarchy is an expression of hyper masculine. The push
Okay.
energy is hyper masculine, but
Grinding, hyper masculine.
grinding, hustling,
Mhm.
without regard to like how sustainable are we right now. Okay.
Mhm.
But logic and decision making is a masculine archetypal energy that everybody needs.
Mhm.
You and I use masculine energy in our business anytime we're talking about structure, anytime we're talking about money, tracking, data, decision making. All of that's a masculine archetype. The feminine archetype, though, in business and entrepreneurship, like that's all your creativity.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'm getting a little feedback there. Okay, it stopped. And so, you need to like slow the roll on the masculine. The masculine can't just be in charge of like pushing ahead. That's how we had, that's consumer energy. That's like taking advantage of all of the other resources. That's how the planet breaks down. That's how people get raped, like
Not
that's the taker
sustainable.
energy. Right. And so we need both. And so we need the deep intuition, all of the mysticism, the deep intuition, those like gut feelings. That's all the feminine,
Mhm.
and they need each other, and we need both. Like I cannot create as an entrepreneur without both.
Mhm.
I
Right.
can't make money without both. I
Right.
can't. Yeah, I can't be impactful.
Well, and that's why you term one of your offerings, your course that I know you have in the Backstage Pass is structure and flow, right? So
Yeah,
having the organization, having
right.
the, as we call, accountability dates, formerly known as deadlines, different things that
Yeah,
keep us on track, but also allow for us to take a siesta in the afternoon. I'm still learning this trait, but it is a
yeah,
good idea to balance one's productive, and then being receptive to
right.
opportunities to be creative that then allows for more production, right? As you said, it's this wave. And something that we talked about previously on some of our talks is that it's a little slower to build this new wave that is honoring both sides of this, right? Because it's
Yeah,
literally, I heard you say earlier in this talk, the pendulum swings a little bit too far in the other way, sort of counter correcting for like how expressed, the grind culture is
yeah,
right now, right? And
yeah,
that's kind of the question is like, is your work woke? I mean, it's cheeky, but also is your work actually even working for you? Are you
yeah,
actually a slave to your work now, even though you're doing your own thing,
yeah,
right? Like there's
right.
just so many different levels of what we can then adapt to be the same thing that we just left, right?
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And I started to say this a moment ago, and then I sidetracked myself. But this is what I started to say when I said this was funny. And you said, like, what can women do, or like, what can we do differently? And we live in this culture where here we are on multiple social media platforms, and we're like posting the memes every day, and things are fast. But I think there is a depth. If we're going to change consciousness and we're going to change our way of being, that's a depth that we have to slow the fuck down for.
Right.
And and like learning to do it differently. And so I think when there is the pressure to like build the business or um, make the money or make an impact and get the followers and all of these like pressures that we inherently feel in this culture, then we're like skimming the surface of things. I had a very sweet woman recently contacted me in my business, and we did one session, and she wants to do a pivot. And she's in the dreaming state. And I see a lot of women, especially, in this great resignation, see a lot of women in this state that hear my TEDx and they come to me and they have this idea, but they're like, how do I formulate the offer? How do I bring in this feminine and balance it with the masculine? And so that's what we work with. And we work together over, maybe 4 months, maybe 6 months to like really begin to anchor in these understandings. And like I've been at this feminine masculine thing for over 10 years, right? Like in my own life. And probably, if I'm being honest with myself, I've probably undersold myself in how much I know or like what my expertise is. Like we women sometimes do, right? I've
Often.
downplayed.
Yes,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Shit. Yeah. And so anyway, this woman finds her way to me via my TEDx, and we do this great session. And she decided, that she didn't want to follow up with more private coaching, but she said to me, and I don't mean to like, I'm not bashing. I think it's like I'm trying to draw attention, consciously to something that was going on in her subconscious. She said, I'm not sure about more private coaching right now. But really what I want to do is ultimately what you do. So Sarah Poet, I see that you balance feminine, masculine. I want to bring that to people. And then the next question out of her mouth was, do you know of a certification course that I could take to learn what you know? And I was like, let me reread that. Let me reread this question. So she's saying, I want to learn from you. I like what you do. It's essentially like I activated her. She felt
Yeah, she was
something.
like,
She was
okay.
like, ooh, this woman, right? But then she didn't want to invest or spend the time there. And she wanted a certification course. So I think a couple things are going on there. One, she wanted it fast. And two, we still have this orientation toward like, well, I just have to get a certification. The patriarchy told me that, like, if I get a certification and
Versus actually
coaching,
embodying it, right?
exactly, like this
Right,
embodied leadership, like that's consciousness.
right.
This is
And
like,
that's
I
why
don't
you're
feel
like, I don't like to say woke, right? Because like you can't just put a work, you can't just like stamp
no,
woke on it,
right, right,
right?
right,
Spoiler alert, nobody's work is woke because you can't just get the damn certification. You have to do the work,
exactly. You have to
but
do
also
the work.
how do you so you're doing the work, right? Like, okay, so we're reading the damn books, we're meditating, we're da-da-da,
Yeah,
we're eating cleaner, we're recognizing what our
yeah,
our conversations, how they affect people. We're seeing our like we're waking up, right?
yeah,
But if we're still going to work in the same system, if we're still going to Facebook where we hate to hang out, hey Facebook, what's up? We're live. Like, how are we actually doing it differently, right? And it's like it's a
yeah,
little by little that we're
absolutely.
shifting or moving or like wiping some of this crap or digging some of it up and throwing it out without
Yeah,
totally throwing the baby out with the bathwater because we still need the
yeah,
cleaner steps,
right,
right? Like
right, right,
it's
right.
tricky.
Like you have to utilize the systems, and then like create the new systems. Absolutely.
You have to be living in the
Yeah,
patriarchy simultaneously while you're trying to schmopple the damn thing.
yeah,
Schmopple. It's the comical way that that one experiences while they're living within the structures that they're trying to bust over with
yeah,
a couple jokes and
right,
some
right.
tits too.
And like, I just want to, one more little story. I was having this conversation with a wonderful man this morning who works for an organization that does gender equity and reconciliation work. I want to work with companies and corporations to do gender equity and reconciliation work. So I'm trying to like build this leg of my business and make contacts and get into, progressive businesses and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but I'm like one woman. I'm like, can I get in there? Like, who wants to talk to me? Where are the contacts?
Right.
And this is what it's like. We're like, I have a vision. I know that we need this, and here I go. Right. So I'm talking to this man who has a lot of experience in HR and with gender equity and reconciliation, and he essentially said to me, "This isn't happening. Like, what you want to do does not exist. And it probably doesn't exist, A, because who's done it, and B, because, are you going to be welcome into those spaces that it's needed. And so I was on the call with this very, very kind man. And I'm going through the like, he's telling me it can't happen. And I'm like, I want to cry. I want to smash things. I want to I don't want to give up and get a job. Right. And so I'm going through this range of emotions. And then by the end of the call, I was like, well, he said it doesn't exist. I can make it. I can be the only one that does it.
Yes, lady boss.
Right? And then I was like, okay, that's more risk. I'm going to
Here, hold my beer. Right? Look, thank you for the information. I'll be right back.
I was like, okay, well, there are two ways that I can do this. I can assume more risk, or I can, not. And
yes,
it does not appear as though I know how to live and not take that risk. Sorry, kid of mine. That's how I live. That's how we do it. But I do, I do think it's interesting. And I want to say this, as a mama, it's fucking risky to live like this. It really is, to have these kinds of ideas and to be to say over and over again, and I slip back into self-doubt, back into oh, I can't make a difference. I slip into that. And then, couple weeks, couple days, couple months later, and I didn't come to fall down. I did not come to not be a thought leader. It's what I signed up for. And so I keep going, but whatever speed that needs to happen for people, I want to say I respect that speed, whatever speed is needed, because
back to the fire hose versus the teaspoon.
Exactly.
About it. If you're curious about this, then let's have the conversation, just like you and me. And I just want to say to you and to any of our listeners, whether it's on the Clubhouse room, on LinkedIn, or good old Facebook, the intentionality that you set, Sarah, I see you. We see you. Thank you, because it also validates other people's experience of being every time I think about doing differently, if someone, even if they say it nicely, even if they say it without being a patronizing jerk, even if they are supportive, it can still feel very defeating, as if there is no other way. But it takes people like you, like me, thought leaders who are interested in doing it different to keep saying, no, we can do it differently, and to ally and to build bridges. That is, I know what you're doing with your program, Sustain. It's definitely what we're doing on the Backstage Pass, because I have felt like you many times where it's just okay, what am I even thinking here? Nobody knows what this is. I was applying for working on some money stuff the other day, and give the whole thing. And it was kind of oh, wow, what is this?
Yeah.
It's online. Oh, there's not anything really I don't know if this is something. And it's I moved from before to going, to going, hey, it's okay. I understand. You don't see it yet. I'm still getting clear on my words. I'm still getting clear on my marketing. Then I'm working. I'm going back to, but I'll see you in 5 years, and you're going to be damn it. I wish I did to that.
Do you remember the thing that I said to you the very first time I heard about LVI Backstage Pass? Do you remember the words?
Remind me, please.
I said, this is the future. I'm in.
Yes. And you keep saying, I mean, and it's so, to your point earlier, it's so fucking validating when someone's I see what you're doing. Right. And so thank you for seeing, and I see what you're doing. And so if you will, Sarah, as we wrap up, talk about sustaining, talk about keeping this mission sustainable within yourself, and how you are seeing other people, other individuals, couples, and thought leaders on their way.
Yes. Thank you so much. Well, I will just so vulnerably share that. So I wrote this offering called Sustain for women in business, early business, 0 through 3, years 0 through 3. Female entrepreneurs who are having this sacred remembering experience, which is part of my brand. That's my podcast. It's when women are waking up to this truth of who we are and we have so much magic and so much, information in us that needs to come out in order to change the world. Anyway, I wrote Sustain over a year ago. And the negative self-talk was like, my business is not, viable enough for me to offer um, this offering. And so I had all this negative self-talk, and I stopped myself from like doing the brave thought leadership thing to say, it's not about me having all of the answers, but it is about us knowing that we will together figure it out. Like women together who are aligned in the missions will figure it out. And so Sustain, I'm going to run it as a mastermind for females, probably a spiritual tint to your business if you're interested in my work at all. But we're going to be talking about feminine and masculine business and what that looks like, what the new money systems look like.
Mhm.
And I think I'm actually even going to launch this with a wholly different pricing structure, because we didn't even get into today, like how pricing structures are usually very,
Mhm.
based in the old. And so, how do we make a living, but also be very ethical and exactly in our like how we charge people? And that's what happened to me last year. Not happened to me, but I had a mass awakening as like a spiritual coach, and all of those like ladders and kind of schemes that are out there about like, well, if you charge this much, then somebody has to pay you more. And it was like crazy. And I stepped out of that because I was like, this doesn't have heart. This is not the true consciousness that I came for. And so, really restructuring all the pricing in my business, restructuring all of the offers in my business. And I think I'm going to run this mastermind in a totally different pricing structure where the more women that join, the more the price goes down for everyone.
Ooh,
So,
interesting.
like, and this is just purely intuitive. Like, I've never seen anyone else do it, but some people would be like, "You want to join my mastermind? That's $10,000, right?"
Mhm.
And I'm like, "Well, what if I said, okay, for this 3 months of work, I'm going to make 20 grand. And I'm not trying to make 20 grand off of each of you. I'm just trying to make 20 grand. And so if 4 people join, that's a $5,000 investment. But, if 10 people join, that's a $2,000 investment,
Hmm.
right? And so it's like, hey, I'm doing what I need to do to take care of my family. Like, I'm not trying to get rich off of exploiting anybody else with my pricing.
Mhm.
And I know what happens. I just got chills. I know what happens when I put women together with this kind of curiosity. We are going to figure out the answers, like for business, moving into a new paradigm.
Interesting.
And
So I want to
mhm,
follow this. I hope
yeah,
I'm hoping with this model, if there's a way for, and I don't know, and of course this is like your offer, but it'd be super cool to see that as like a social experience, that experiment that's also obviously promoting click the link, right? Because
yeah,
like if to the whole point of this conversation, like how we do business differently, is your work woke, like for real? Like could you participate in something that at its um highest point cost you this much, but by your participation and caring, right, cost you this much? And could we track that from like, launch of the marketing platform, the marketing moment to time for course to open to go,
yeah,
as also like a PR, like, because I would like to watch that because I'd like to be like, oh, what's the price now, right? Like, I
right,
might, because that's just the where my lady boss brain goes is like, okay, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna try to get. I'm actually gonna bring like 4 ladies with me because I'll sign up
yeah,
for it
right,
for, if I
yeah,
did the math right, that would make it. If I bring 4 ladies, right, then it's like
yeah,
there's skin in the game, and I
right,
have to say though, honestly, it did make me go a little bit to like MLM, like if I bring friends or if I, but it's actually not to going back to this, right? With
yeah,
what I was doing before, which you've seen my joke before, but like this is the way that it's on the dollar. Also, it's a pyramid. There's
the
a couple
hierarchy,
people
yeah.
up here, and there's a lot of people down here supporting the pyramid. What does it look like when we go like this? Like
That looks like a
literally,
womb. That looks like a feminine womb.
it looks like some things that if we restructure it,
Yes,
it could help. And we're not trying to just like literally have those people at the bottom down there, good things happen down there also, folks. Good things happen down there, right?
So
And
good.
so just saying, girl. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Right? So like if we literally try out
Yeah,
these things, how can it, you're like, all I'm saying is it's interesting. I want to watch, I want to
I
follow
know.
along.
Yeah.
So Sarah, people can find out about Sustain right
Yes.
here, right?
Yep.
They can follow you on social. Tell us, throw it in the chat, and I'll pop it up here too, because perhaps any of your other places of doing this new model of pricing, we could follow along. So I will definitely share that handle right here. And then in closing, Sarah, just something, something interesting for our folks here on LinkedIn, on the Clubhouse stage, and of course on the Backstage Pass. Tell us something that like nobody really knows about you. Like what's something that people wouldn't know about Sarah Poet? Just I know you didn't know I was going to ask you this, Johnny on the
I
spot.
had no idea. And I've spilled so much that there's not a lot that can't be found on the internet. Um, right? One
That
thing,
sounds like a challenge, folks. You go and follow
I
Sarah on
know.
social.
Yeah, one thing that people don't know about me, I should have this answer like prepared because it's like the go-to getting to know you answer. I guess, yeah, I'll spill that I'm exploring love relationship in a new way right now. Like
Wow.
present moments, haven't been talking about it, but yeah, looking at like what does truly healthy feminine masculine look like in a conscious relationship. And so you gathered it from what I said here, but actually I'll say this. Feminine masculine is also my spiritual path. It's like I say feminine masculine as in like the holy, the godhead, right? Like mother father god is like how I would say that. And so all of this, I don't have to talk about the spirituality, but it's also a very spiritual walk for me personally. And so what I'm tuning into all the time is like what's going on with these energies on the planet.
Mm,
And what's really cool is that they are becoming more and more like sovereign and more conscious.
mm,
And so, you asked about what is the archetypal energy. And, I think anybody can tap into it. And it can also be like a mystical experience. So, right now, I'm like bringing together my cognitive understanding and my mystical and exploring that in conscious relationships. So,
Okay, so I'm putting a pin on that for later because you said a
yeah,
lot without saying very much there, my friend. You said some
yeah,
things that I'm like, she's exploring things. So
yeah,
I will
yeah.
follow up on that personally and then also ask more about it privately. Um, so that's awesome. And I'm excited for you on all of the ways of
Yeah,
expounding love language and the
yeah,
masculine and the feminine.
yeah.
It is spring after all. You got to like get your Twitter paid on and, get your feels. Hey,
We
hey.
first did our photos like in the springtime, and you were like, "We're going to the flowers. Like
Oh, yes.
we went to like the most erotic scene in like with wildlife in the Biltmore greenhouse." And
Yeah.
those pictures are so good because it's like
They're
bursting with
luscious.
life.
They're definitely luscious.
Exactly.
I
Yes.
just want to, as we wrap up, I want to point to Sarah's shop in the LBI Mall.
Yes.
That is on the Backstage Pass. We have a whole e-commerce lane of things where women are doing business together and differently. Hey, we're pulling back the curtain on how we do business. So we can do things like this, like flipping the script on how we share our tools and resources. And Sarah has a really cool course. They're talking about exactly what we talked about today. So if
Yep.
you're on the Backstage, you should head to the mall right now. And if you're not yet on the Backstage, you can still click this link and sign up immediately.
Great.
Sarah, I'm super excited that we got to have this talk because, you and we have been in great friendship, in collaboration, co-conspirators, shit stirrers together. So it's been my pleasure to have you on the show. I'm going to have us escorted out in the same way that we had been brought in by this incredible musical artist that Sarah suggested, Ayla Nero of the Hollowbone Collective. Super
Yeah.
beautiful song.
That
And Sarah, I
song.
just hope you have an awesome weekend with your new sweetheart and with everything you got going on in the world.
Right. And we're going to take some time to flow this weekend and not just work.
Yes.
Yeah,
You gotta play. If you're gonna play, you gotta also have some fun with it. If you're gonna work
that's right.
hard, you gotta also play hard, right?
Yeah, yeah. So good to
All
be
right,
here
girl.
with you. Thank you.
Thanks for stopping by. Talk to you later, Sarah. All right, friends. Well, you heard it first. That is Sarah Poet, and she's talking all about, doing business differently. If you don't like the word woke, fine. Come up with a new word. Cancel that too. Then do something differently. If you don't like it, then change it. That's what I'm here for. And that is most certainly what we are doing on the Backstage Pass. Let me get my little multitasking fingers in order here. If you have yet to come backstage, what are you waiting for? Check out the backstagepass.com over here in the clubhouse. It's been a minute. Anybody who follows me knows I have all of the devices. How many channels can we be on at one time? Just call me Babs Walters. Click the link here in Clubhouse. It'll take you backstage. It's pinned at the top. And for our dear family already on the backstage, I went without the camera on that, but you're just getting the audio because you don't want to just look at my face the whole time. I want you to see Sarah and meet her. So definitely go check out Sarah's website. If you haven't yet, friends, on the Backstage Pass, you can look up Sarah Poet on the Backstage under the membership directory in the top banner. There's all these yummy tools back there. So don't forget to click on all the damn buttons. All right, y'all. I have cursed enough for this Friday, or at least publicly. Who knows what I'll do privately. Ciao for now.